we work a lot with membership-based organizations, private schools, anything that where the churches, and you name it, like where the story about who you are and where you come from as a community
is important. Yeah.
It's important, and it needs to be translated both as accessible and as stories to a digital world. So we work with NFL teams, as well as like local churches or dioceses. It's
that's
really
pretty cool
across the board. Yeah.
Welcome to Embracing Digital Transformation, where we investigate effective change leveraging people, process, and technology. This is Darren Pulsford, Chief Solution Architect, author, and most importantly, your host. On today's episode, Embracing Historical Storytelling with President and CEO of HistoryIT, Kristen Gwinn-Becker. Kristen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Darren. I'm excited to be here.
So we were introduced, was it just last week?
I think so.
Yeah, and you got on my calendar real quick. This has been really interesting. And I thought, history and digital transformation. All right, I'll listen to what Kristen has to say, but I'm probably going to say no. But then I said, wait just a second. This is actually pretty cool. So, but before we get into history and IT and what, the name of your company, let's hear your background story, Kristen, because my viewers love to listen to, or my listeners love to listen to people's background story.
Sure. Happy to. So I grew up in Maine, and I went to school to study history. And then I graduated, and it was the 90s, and I went to San Francisco for the dot-com boom. And I was really interested in technology and IT, and it was a very exciting time to play with databases and, web development and all that was in the 90s. I was there for the boom and the bust. So this kind of budding tech entrepreneur, although I wouldn't have.
Were you one of those ones that went out and bought a black sedan like everybody else did at the late 90s and then had to sell it when everything crashed? Were you one of those people?
No. I was working for nonprofit organizations. Like I was still in a good cost, but it was the technology that was really fascinating to me, right? I was also 21 years old and wanted to live in San Francisco, let's be honest.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
But it was an exciting time, right? It was an exciting time for tech.
Oh, yeah.
And then I, went the very common career trajectory from IT to do a PhD in history in the humanities. So not really. So so I did that. So I moved to Washington, D.C. I went to GW to do a PhD. And with no intention of teaching, I got a research fellowship to go there to work on the Eleanor Roosevelt papers, which was also exciting to me.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was super cool, right? So, graduate school is an incredible privilege. It's an incredible privilege. So, I got to spend several years like drinking coffee, talking about history with like-minded people, having all kinds of crazy ideas. But I was also, remained very interested in technology and very interested in how history impacts the present day and how it will impact the future and how we need to better utilize it in order to really gain all that we can from that. So when I finished my PhD, I had this unique set of experiences, right? And I would say that, the world of technology and the world of humanities rarely intersect.
You're right.
Certainly didn't 15 years ago. So I founded in 2011, I founded HistoryIT, and I was living in Chicago at the time. We grew very quickly. So I founded this company with this idea that, I'd had all of this experience in archives. I've visited hundreds of archives, the privilege of the training to understand how they're organized and how to research them. And now I have these fancy letters after my name, and I get to look at all this stuff, and then I get to go and interpret for all of you people who don't have the fancy letters after your name, right? Like what all of this means. But actually, a couple things that model doesn't work anymore, right? So I wanted initially to have this company that helped organizations better understand that their archives were unique troves of content. Like in a time when content is king, an archive is a collection of materials, right, that we utilize as evidence or as content to tell stories about who we are, how we got there, tell stories about where we're going. And then quickly in my kind of work to do that, it became evident that it was nearly impossible to do because so little of it was digital. And it was so little of it was digital in the way that it was truly accessible. Whatever was digital was not for any kind of truly long-term preservation. So HistoryIT kind of really quickly evolved into the kind of full array of digital collections, everything that it means. And we could talk about that all week long, Darren, but like all that digital preservation truly means. That's kind of how I got, and then the company has just kind of grown year over year for almost 14 years.
So when you say digital, and you're going after IT organizations primarily to archive their data, or you're going after every?
No, thanks for letting me clarify that. So no, really what we're looking at, or like say any organization that's older than 5 minutes and can benefit from better access to their story. With their access to their story. So that said, we work maybe 25, 30% of our market, of our clientele are where you'd expect us to be: historical societies, museums, libraries, the world of traditional history. The rest of it is really then the gamut. So we think about the kinds of organizations, companies and nonprofits that benefit from telling their story. So we work a lot with membership-based organizations, private schools, anything that where the churches, and you name it, like where the story about who you are and where you come from as a community
is important. Yeah,
it's important, and it needs to be translated both as accessible and as stories to a digital world. So we work with NFL teams, as well as like local churches or dioceses. It's really
that's pretty cool
across the board. Yeah.
So you're going to bring, I'm going to call it the real world collection of data, analog data, not digital data. Mm-hmm. You're collecting that stuff as well as digital data. Because the first thing that popped in my head was, well, what about a company like OpenAI?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or OpenAI. Born on the internet, completely digital. Why would they need something from you guys? I understand the analog stuff, but let's talk first about born on the internet companies, right? Yeah. And I'm not even including like Google or Amazon, because they weren't born on the internet. Right. They were born outside the internet and came in, but companies that were just purely born on the internet.
Well, I think it's the same approach that we take. First I think it's someone else's nightmare. Like our HistoryIT's mission is to save history. And that means like everything that is analog, it's less than 2% of all of this history. What's remained is digital and any true like preserved.
Wow, that's so small compared to what we think.
It's so small, and it's smaller than we think because people are scanning stuff or putting it online and they think then that it's digital, but that's not, it's not. But so we have so much work to do, and we're like the last generation. Gen X is the last of the groups that grew up doing like accessing information in an analog way
at a Dewey Decimal System,
right. And so how that translates now is really, really critical. So HistoryIT really does focus on the materials, so that that's anything 2D, 3D, AV, transferring that to the digital realm in a way that's truly accessible. But if you think about like what's important to us in building a digital strategy for your organization, it's the same with born digital content. What's truly important, the file formats that you use. Do you have an archive preservation? There's an international standard. Do you have something a file that can stand the test of time? And how is it indexed? How is it tagged? How is it organized?
I was going to say, there's petabytes of information in some of these organizations, right?
And at the end of the day, like full text searchability isn't terribly useful among generations that are trained by search engines, right? Like we want to type something in the language that we use, and we want immediate relevant content. And if we don't get it, we think it doesn't exist. So the challenge of that metadata, the challenge of getting all of that, the digital formatting correct is really critical, and putting it in its own. So I should say we're a software company as well. So we had to develop our own software to really house digital collections in a way that made sense for digital generations.
So this is really interesting because the thing that's going through my head right now, I just finished the book Chip Wars, which talks about the history of Silicon Valley and what's going on today. And Intel, who I work for, is prominent in that whole thing. And Intel has a museum at their headquarters, which I've been through several times with our customers and things. And it's fascinating to me how much was written on memos, analog, right? The real world things. And that is captured, but how much of it is digitized and really captured so that we can really research, when did Gordon Moore really come up with his, Moore's law? And when was the first, transistor that Intel produced? Those sorts of things may not matter to a lot of people, but I think they actually do. Because in the book, I learned, and you would think I've been in Intel for a long time, 14 years. You would think I'd know its history. I had no idea until I listened to this book. And I only got a sliver of one historian's view of it to tell a narrative.
Right.
So yeah, it's fascinating to me. And I don't know if Intel has an archival system, or what would their title be inside a company? Is there a chief?
I'm sure they do. Most technology companies have an archive. To some degree, they have an archivist or a team of archivists, depending.
Archivist. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yep.
Archivist. It sounds like alchemist, I have to say. But archivist, I love the name.
Right. So where we differ from the traditional archivist, although we certainly work with plenty of them and employ plenty of them, is so we're interested in certainly, so with Intel, preserving that history, preserving that legacy, but in a way that it's really usable by the organization. So how does access to that evidence enable the organization, like quick access, allow them to quickly counter anything that might come up in social media about their history, or to quickly make its evidence to the past, right? In an era of fake news. So you want to be able to quickly locate this, or have someone else locate it, not just me as a historian saying, this is what happened, and I know because I got to go into the secret archive and see it. Anybody can pull it up and make their own determination about the validity of that claim.
Fascinating. Another thing that popped into my head, like if an organization, Intel's going through a cultural shift, and we've been told by our leaders, get back to the fundamental culture of Intel at the beginning. What a great place. Go to an archivalist and archivist.
Archivist, yeah.
Archivist. Thank you, archivist. I'm going to get it in my head. An archivist, and say, let's really let people experience what that is, what that culture was like. What was it really like? And I think that would be really invaluable.
Yeah, I think it's so access to digital storytelling and the tools that we use to tell that history within an archive that can be usable by any number of different divisions within an organization or an institution. If you think about internal culture is a big one. How are we telling the story about who we are and how we got here? To what extent is that story part of our brand, part of our marketing? Where does it feed into sales and marketing? To what extent does it feed into retail? What does it feed into R&D? So you're talking about access. So all of those different stakeholders or potential end users need to access that content, or could draw value from that content in unique ways.
Oh, I love it. I see, when we talked, you tickled my funny bone just a little bit, where I'm like, I got to learn more about this, because it's really fascinating. Now, here's the next big question, and a concern that I have, and I wonder, since you know this industry so well, I'm new to it. Is there a danger of losing, much like we heard the library in Alexandria was lost, right? Hundreds of thousands of scrolls. All it takes is an EMP attack. Could we lose all this digital stuff that you've been collecting. How do I protect my digital archives?
Yep.
And, I can't just put them on, floppy drives don't even exist
Right.
anymore, but,
Right. Well,
you know,
that's the key. So you think about the danger to a physical archive is far greater. So the National Museum of Brazil burned to the ground. So fire, flood, all of that. But if you once it transfers, getting it into like a true digital preservation system, that's a software. So our software is called Odyssey Preservation, like that. There are a few things that go into that to protect it. One is the file formats you use. And it's a whole other show about like the file formats, because you mentioned floppy disks. A lot of people would quote unquote digitize something, and that means that they've got a
it's on a
50,000
thumb drive.
files named DCP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on a thumb drive or a hard drive somewhere. Those hard drives fail all the time.
Yeah.
They're on CDs. You get a scratch, it's gone. So what the file types are and how they're stored is incredibly important. So a digital preservation system, so ours is based in the cloud. It's built on Amazon AWS. So that means it can scale, ad infinitum, and it's backed up and preserved in a variety of places, right? By the second, is consistently backed up. So just like any other like true data program in the cloud, it's not, the cloud is multiple servers all over the place. So it has triple redundancy, right? It's in all of these places. That's how you truly protect it.
Okay. So having it in multiple places, even multiple clouds is an option, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
now what if I don't trust the cloud service providers?
I can't help you.
Yeah, that's hard. So do you know of anyone that is storing digital archives in physical form, and what they're looking at to do that?
So sure. I mean, you can spin up your own server. You can spin up, you can have your own internal, but the question is really kind of what's its purpose, right?
Okay,
So
gotcha.
having a hard drive here in my office is far riskier
Oh,
than
yeah,
anything
yeah.
in the cloud,
Yeah.
right? But also, how is that? Because so here's the other side of preservation is you have all of these digital files and they're protected, they're created just as they're supposed to be. But if you haven't like cataloged and tagged them in ways that are meaningful, they are useless. They're digital photocopies that you can just stack up and you can't find anything. It's not bringing you any value. It's not
kind of like the 250,000 photos that I have up in Google Photos.
Right. If that's not tagged in some real way that's usable, and if you're an organization like you're using that to tell stories, you need easy access to all of that in order for so then 2 generations from now, who are these people? What does it mean? Like, why did Darren keep all of these? Like, no idea. If that information that's associated with archival items, if that's not preserved, then there's no point.
Okay. This makes sense. Okay. Now my next big question, because everyone's talking about it. How does AI have a play in this? Can I leverage AI to help my metadata tagging to help me create stories from these archives?
I think in a very strategic way, yes. So, HistoryIT, both in the services that we offer and in our software platform, we're doing a lot of work and integration with AI. There is a necessary human component because this is the thing that we have to get right. So the danger of AI in this environment is like, well, it's easier and like it's cheaper to just let's just let this program do it. And it's erroneous in many ways, right? And AI has a lot of its own internal biases that could. So I think what's still important is our approach with any organization that's building a digital archive. We create a digital strategic plan first. Where are you? Where do you want to go? What's it going to take to get there? What are the best tools we can leverage? AI is certainly a part of that. There's a whole bunch of tasks that we would have done 10 years ago we don't do now, but because AI can do it more efficiently. But there are lots of humans still involved because if we don't get it right, then we've created some skewed version of the past, right?
Oh, that's so. I love how you said that. We still need the humans in there, but we can automate a lot of the redundant tasks,
Yep.
right? but we still need a human in there to make decisions so you really see AI and human really working together instead of one replacing the other.
Absolutely. Yes.
So how you mentioned a little bit how people get started. You have to come up with a strategy, right? So what does that look like? What does an archival strategy look like, or a history strategy look like? Just high level.
Sure. So the first, HistoryIT's approach is strategize, digitize, share. So strategizing means we start any project wherever our client is with a full assessment. Sometimes that's like teams on site. If it's a massive, collection of material, sometimes that's remote. Sometimes it's one person. It varies. But the idea is to assess a collection, both physical and digital, for where it is. What condition is it in? What kind of stuff is it? Is it appropriate to the organization? Do you need to keep this stuff? What's missing?
Oh, wait. Keep the stuff. Wait, I want to touch on that.
Okay. Well, like, as in, even before digitizing, like, is there stuff, like, do you have, for some reason, like 5,000 copies of National Geographic that just you happen to have in this collection? I mean, it's taking up space, but it has nothing to do with the history of your organization, or it exists elsewhere in all these ways. So at any rate, the first piece is what is the honest state of your collection? You have to assess it. And then we interview stakeholders. So we say, all right, so what are we trying to get to? Or we're trying to get to fully digital. What's the roadmap to get there? And getting various stakeholders, various end users of a digital archive or digital museum that it's ultimately going to become. What is their normal language? What are people going to search for? What kind of audiences do you want to engage? And how does that inform your ultimate like metadata strategy? So if you say our collection should be fully accessible by fifth graders, and you say,
that's different metadata than
right. We're going to catalog it using Library of Congress subject authorities that use the word dwelling for house or home. Like, that's not going to be searchable by fifth graders or non-fifth graders for that matter. So that digital strategic plan is key. And then from there, you have to build a plan, because we all know, no matter what industry you're in, like any kind of digital project, these are special projects, and you do one, and then maybe that falls through, or it was a Drupal site and that becomes obsolete, and that guy's not here anymore who built that thing. Like, the history gets lost. So to prioritize the history, it's like, all right, we're going to build a 5-year plan. This is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to take. And we help build that plan. And then if capacity is needed, we bring that in. So that's the digital imaging or media conversion, the metadata, the QC, bringing that software platform in. Those are all the steps to getting into a digital archive and museum.
This is really fascinating. It's a lot more involved than most people would think.
Yeah.
Right? Because, hey, I just do backups. I backed everything up. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, so think about you got a scanner on your desk, like it's probably, regular consumer grade scanner. It they scans to PDFs and JPEGs.
Yeah.
Web browsers render JPEGs and PDFs. In a couple of years, they won't. What does that mean? Like, you have a small file format that it's compressed, and you can't transform it to something else. So you're not truly preserving it, but you think you are. So it requires an overall real commitment to truly being good stewards and prioritizing digital preservation in a way that most people think we don't have to, because we've got all these digital tools and we're everywhere.
Well, because people say, I've got a JPEG of that document.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we scanned that. We scanned that years ago. Great.
But is it searchable?
Right.
And
where is it
tagged, or where is it? Yeah, I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is it a PNG file that's only available unless nobody scratched your CD or your DVD drive? Yep.
Yeah. No, this is really, really fascinating. And it's opened my eyes to a whole new world that I never thought, surely everything's digitized, right? Yeah. And my daughter, surprisingly enough, she's following the same career path as you, by the way. History major, working high tech. She's a product manager it's interesting. She's a product manager for Angel Studios.
Oh, wow.
Which she's loving. And I found, wait, product manager, what, history major, product manager? Perfect. Because she's into the details. She loves telling the story. She loves, working with people. And, I could see her moving in your direction very easily. So I'm going to suggest that she listens to this. You're a good mentor for her. I think this is awesome. Kristen, thanks for coming on the show. This has been insightful. I appreciate it. And I obviously am going to have to learn more about this. So we'll probably have to have you come back on and talk about the file formats, because that one you touched on a couple times, and I know we're going to have to touch on that more, because you brought up something that I think most people believe, that JPEG and PDF are going to be around forever.
Right. Yeah. Where's your MySpace account? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That is so true. Thanks again, Kristen.
Sure thing. Take care. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to Embracing Digital Transformation today. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it 5 stars on your favorite podcasting site or YouTube channel. You can find out more information about Embracing Digital Transformation at embracingdigital.org. Until next time, go out and embrace the digital revolution.